Are you ready, Beth? Good afternoon. I'll use my cell phone. I don't have my gun. I'd like to call the Fairfax County Electoral Board meeting to order for our Thursday, May 8th meeting, and introduce to you on my right, your left, our secretary treasurer. No, not a treasurer, just the secretary. Jeff DePiro.
I'm working on emptying the treasury.
There's no treasurer left. And on my left, on your right, Kevin Pinkney, our vice chairman. As you just heard the voice of God that came on, the electoral board meetings are now videotaped. The link to the recording will be available on the Office of Elections Electoral Board Meeting Minutes webpage within 3 business days of the meeting. If you do not want your image recorded, please hide your video. So we'll move along. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. I'll second.
All in discussion. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Adoption of the minutes of the April 10 meeting. You have them in front of you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Are there corrections or additions? Discussion?
None for me.
All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, that motion carries. Appointment of election officers. You have that page in front of you. We have 24 Democrats, 9 Republicans, and 4 unaffiliated on our list. Is there a motion to appoint these 37 officers?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
I do have a.
Oh.
Kind of quickly there.
Hello. You got to get on this.
Okay.
High speed rail.
My question is, obviously there's an imbalance for this batch. How are we doing overall attempted statutory parity?
Well, for this election, we won't have parity because we'll have differences.
Well, yeah, for the primary, but
I
in
think
terms
his
of our.
question is totally how we doing.
Ronnie, could you report on that? How is the parity coming?
Here's Gretchen.
Oh, Gretchen back here.
Like, what's the current breakdown?
This is why I encourage people, they'll put the chairs back up here so you can all sit on them. So you can, yes.
So our current breakdown in election officers is around, I think, 2,600 Democrats, I think 1,400 Republican officers, and around 1,100 unaffiliated officers. We'll resume after the June election some more recruitment efforts to improve that party parity, specifically by getting more Republican affiliated officers
For the general.
for the general election in November.
Okay.
For this election, we're focusing almost exclusively on bringing in Democratic officers for the single party Democratic primary.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer.
Well, and follow up. So you had mentioned the challenge of a pipeline so that we have either chiefs or assistant chiefs, the Republican pipeline. What efforts or plans are there to enhance that pipeline?
Having sufficient Republican affiliated chiefs in a general election.
Well, sufficiently experienced, yes, chiefs in particular, or assistant chiefs with that.
In other words, what do we do to find more of them?
And to give those that we have the experience so that they will be able to step up and take on their responsibility.
Good question. We have a number of additional optional workshops for chiefs and assistant chiefs, and we encourage especially brand new chiefs to take advantage of those. We have a chiefs workshop, which gives you a good overview of what it takes to be a chief. And then we hear time and time again that one of our most stressful parts of being a chief is the closing process. So right after the polls close, getting everything packed up. And so we have a specific closing procedures workshop that our training and operations team developed for November that went over really, really well. So we have those. And all chiefs and assistant chiefs are invited to an open house about a week before election day usually, so they can get some good hands-on practice on any number of things. So with closing, or if they have questions about how to manage their precinct, or if they want to practice the SOR, we've got different stations for each of those things. In terms of recruiting additional officers, we've got In every training class, we've been asking for putting out a pitch to get chiefs and assistant chiefs in the precincts as well as in the satellites. Our satellite officers make fantastic precinct chiefs because they have a lot of experience. So our satellite staff has been really helpful in helping us get additional officers there as well. And we're making tons of phone calls. We have one person on the election officer team specifically dedicated just to assigning chiefs and assistant chiefs. And she's fantastic at making sure to give them some really personal help. It is still a challenge. It's a big ask to get someone to be a chief. We ask a lot of our chiefs. And so that's definitely an ongoing issue to make sure we have enough people willing to serve in that role. So Ravi, is there anything you want to add to that?
I would like to add something, a good metric of what they're doing is success. And Gretchen talked about 2,600 Democratic officers and 1,400 Republican. That's a total of, and the independents, 5,206 have completed their oaths. Typically by the end of the term, which will be next December, we're at about 80 to 90%. We're at 92% already. So they're doing a terrific job getting people to complete their oaths.
Well, and I understand with the change of the primary becoming a one-party primary, that there was a need to shift all of the staffing for all of the, throughout. And so kudos.
Thank you. We were around 75% confirmed on all of our Republican affiliated chiefs, which was awesome. And then the next day we said, we're so sorry, we can't use you for this election in that capacity, but we'd love to have you serve again in November. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so we've had our discussion.
Is it time to vote? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Welcome to, and I haven't introduced him yet, Eric Spicer, our general registrar. Good afternoon.
It's good to be here.
Thanks for joining it. General registrar's report.
The first couple, thank you. The first couple pages are the stats as usual. Yeah, 819 voters. You see that the first page. And then going through the numbers, there as you'd expect. Now notice the deceased is 535. And I'm going to talk more about that in just a moment. So remember that number, 535. We go to page 2. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. Usual numbers. If you don't have questions, I'll go on to talk more about the deceased voters. But first, are there any questions about the stats? And then you want to hear about these deceased voters. So we have the opportunity we're very excited, since 2023, we get information at all times from the state, but we hate to rely on the state to give us, to tell us who has died. So because we went clean and accurate voters, since 2023, we've been able to look at obituaries and other death certificates and other information. So we've utilized that. You see in these numbers, we've canceled 230 voter records based on the obituaries. Now, that includes 141 individuals who appeared to be over 100 on Veris, but they weren't actually over 100. They died before they reached 100. It also includes.
How do we know that?
Well, because we know when they died. So they were 98, 97. And it also includes 7 individuals who did make it to 100 and they were deceased. Now, where those numbers are important, as of yesterday, we have 363 individuals on Veris who are over 100. So if you think about it, we canceled 141 who appeared to be over 100. So it's gone from almost 500. It's gone down quite a bit, about almost 30%. So we're trying to clean the voter list. And again, that was from meticulously researching the obituaries, death certificates. We don't take somebody off the voter list unless we're certain.
Questions so far? Okay.
No question.
You have a question?
No, I don't have a question.
Okay.
I'm saying I don't.
Move on to polling place changes. Oh, this is what we're going to do before the board of supervisors.
For polling places, Beth, would you like to say a few words? I know you take it.
Sure, and in case you can follow up on anything that, there will be quite a few polling, precinct and polling place changes on May 13th. So next Tuesday, we will ask the Board of Supervisors to authorize a public hearing on June the 24th. I want to stress that these polling and precinct changes will not affect the June primary. So the public hearing is June 24th. That's after the primary. So everything will remain as it is until the November election if the Board of Supervisors passes all of these. So we are going to divide the Cameron Glen precinct. And in addition to that, take a small piece of Reston number 1 to create a new precinct that will be named Reston 4. They will vote at the Reston Teen Center, which is connected to the Reston YMCA building on Sunset Hills Road. So, and you can see that what that will accomplish. I won't go over that. So,
Can I?
unless,
answer
yes,
there?
go ahead.
Reston 1, these are big precincts all in a row. Reston 1 is right now 5,100 and 45 total precincts. And that's the part that we're moving some stuff from Reston 1. Also proposed to be moved in consultation with the supervisor is a piece of land that is going to be developed immediately, which would have additional voters in Reston 1. So we're helping move some things from Reston 1 into the new precinct as well as Cameron Glen. You all remember Cameron Glen's one of our big ones too, and so is Reston. So this is a kind of a reconfiguration to solve several problems. I'm sorry.
No, that's great. Because like this is these are a lot of changes that are proposed. The Coates precinct, which is our largest precinct with about 7,000 voters, it will be divided. And the new precinct will be named Copper Mine. Those voters will have their polling place at Flores United Methodist Church on Frying Pan Road.
Who comes up with these names?
The supervisors.
Well, some of them are already.
Well, or we suggest them and they say, yes, I like that, or no, how about this? So.
There is a naming convention though.
Or a numbering convention, but I think the name is, the supervisors have a lot of flexibility.
They came up with Reston.
Yeah, they did. The third change will be to rename the polling place for Green Spring Precinct. Fourth one, it involves Virginia Hills Precinct. The building that they use currently is going to be repurposed as
An old school.
the old schools. And so that polling place will be relocated to the Franconia Rec Center.
What space in the Franconia Rec Center do they intend to use as the place for?
The indoor track area, basketball court area.
Right.
So there's a direct entrance off the parking lot.
I know
It's a really, really big space, so.
Yes, and lots of echo, lots of.
Right, so
Cafeteria versus gym, that's a gym,
True,
Yeah.
but hopefully we'll be, the only.
But that separates
the
from
only
all the ingress, egress, and range of the users, so that has some rationale to it on the tables. Okay, got it.
The fifth, number 5 is Huntington Precinct is going to be divided to create a new precinct called Montebello. And that will be just the Montebello condominiums. And their polling place will be in their community center. So that's going to relieve Huntington Precinct, which has a very small polling place at Fairhaven Community Center. So that's
It's right now at about close to 4,700 voters. So they very tight.
And they're gonna be redeveloping there as well. It's gonna be a lot more.
Yeah.
we are going to adjust the precinct boundaries between Marshall and Shreve precincts to relocate about 1,100 voters that live south of Route 66. We're going to move them into Shreve, and that will relieve the number of voters that are currently in Marshall precinct.
And also Shreve is only 1,500 right now. So this 66 makes a good dividing line between a precinct that's large and a precinct that's small that has a good place to vote in it. And votes in Shreve Elementary.
And those polling places will remain
The same.
either at Marshall or at Shreve Elementary. The precinct boundary between Green Trails and Old Mill precincts will also be adjusted to move a very small enclave of voters from Green Trails into Old Mill. This was a redistricting anomaly that we are now going to be able to correct. Those voters used to be able to easily get across Route 28, but now that it has gone to 4 lanes with sound walls, it makes access for them quite challenging. And they can actually now walk to Old Mill to that polling place, which is Centerville United Methodist Church. So they'll move from the elementary school, Centerville Elementary, to Centerville United Methodist Church. And then finally, the new Franconia Governmental Center will open this summer, and that will relocate the voter satellite office to that address. And once again, that's for November.
We've discussed most of those already. Prior meetings.
That takes us to cancellation of the Republican primary at about 4 o'clock on Tuesday, April 22nd. Not sure what you all were doing, but we were hearing the news. Surprised that we weren't going to have a dual primary. We weren't sure at that point, but we started in action, even though we didn't hear for sure until the next day, because we only had 10 days until what we thought was going to be a dual primary was to start. And as Gretchen said, we had assigned that's and confirmed 75% of our election officers for election day. We had the ballot ready. Thankfully, we had not printed the ballots because that would have been bad. Some jurisdictions in Virginia had already started printing their ballots. We try to wait as long as we can because something like this could occur. And
What did we save by not having to print them?
about $50,000 for the ballots by not printing any Democratic ballots. We
No,
reduced,
no, any Republican ballots. We're
I'm
not
sorry,
printing.
by not, yeah.
I hope we're printing
We will have-
Democratic ballots.
So $50,000. We reduced 200 election officers for election day. That's a little more than $50,000. And we'll have some savings for satellites. Not sure exactly. It depends on what the trend is. Believe it or not, we had for the single party primary, the first day was only 133 voters, but that was a couple more than we had the first day in a dual primary last year. So we're being careful. But a lot of work for staff. We already had the ballot, test decks, everything was going forward at full steam. And then we pivoted. This office is very good at pivoting. And this is not a typo, this is not a mistake. The third paragraph in this section tells you that other jurisdictions in the same position, some of them decided it's just too much trouble to change all your descriptions, to change from a dual party primary to a single party primary. So they left it as a dual party primary. But of course, we'll only be voting in the single party. But there's the option on their system. And on the tapes, the results tape, you would have Republicans that would show hopefully 0. We think that is not advised. It's permitted by elect. But so we chose not to do that. It would have been a little easier, but we don't want mistakes, confusion. So we made all the changes to change to a single party primary.
So can you give us a little? Great. First, when you talk about defining the election, the nomenclature, because I'm still the new guy here, is that the process by which we, in the machines, make machines capable of displaying or reading and tabulating votes?
Yes, it's everything we do on a central computer, which is not connected to the internet. It's very safe. That's how we set everything up. And unfortunately, you can't just delete half of it. You can't delete all the Republican stuff. You have to start over. So yes, it's how you're telling what's going to, at every precinct, 264 precincts, you're defining the election for every part of the county.
And do our people do that, or do we have a vendor or contractor that?
That's an excellent question, because again, some jurisdictions make the mistake of letting a vendor do it. We would never do that. So we had somebody that here, George, from our DIT team, and of course, Cord, late at night, many hours.
The only jurisdiction. Very few do without it.
Which again is more work for staff, but I would have it no other way. We would never want to release that. That some jurisdictions, also let their vendor help with testing. We do all that ourselves because we don't want to leave any of that too, and certainly not defining the election. But again, the vendor is willing to do that for a fee.
Sure. But once it's defined in the mainframe or the central computer, whatever it is, it then gets ported out to all the machines.
Yeah, we burn media, so we have to burn it. In this case, we already had the media prepared. We had to start over, prepare all the media. So first the definition, everything that entails, burn media, and then testing before we get to the actual on-day testing, just to make sure that everything done is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
We had already started for very close to the early voting beginning. And so we had Republican chiefs for for the 3 satellites and for the others that were going to start, but we pivoted and changed everything. I think going to page 5, as I mentioned earlier, we started absentee voting last Friday. The numbers may not seem impressive, but for a primary, we're off to a good start. Absentee mail requests, less than what we reported previously because it doesn't have any Republican requests, but we have 45,000, and we added a little chart there was some interest last time. What has happened recently? So we gave you a snapshot for April. We had 201 requests in the month of April, and this included 66 one-time. So you see the total one-time request is 112. That includes 66 that came in April, and the rest came in before that. And then the permanent absentee, of course, most of them were already included in the permanent absentee number, but another 117 individuals in April said, I want to be added to the permanent list. And the overseas and military about 18. Just want to give you a snapshot. Then election officer assignments, as I mentioned earlier, instead of having 1,800 election officers, we're going to have 1,600. Of course, you have minimum levels needed every precinct for a single party primary. And they will all, we're going to try to get all Democratic officers, and certainly the chiefs will be Democrats, and as many assistant chiefs as possible. And then election officer training, we're doing a lot of hands-on training. Regardless of the type of election, because we just started our appointment term, we have to train all of our election officers. So over 2,000 reappointed election officers have already completed their online training. We have a lot of online training, but also a lot of in-person training, which we've talked about previously. Any questions about the election officers or the training? That takes us to the logic and accuracy testing. And
I'm so glad I don't have to pass logic and action.
as I mentioned, and it has always been the case, we do it ourselves. And it's a very time-consuming process because we touch every single machine just to make sure that it's functioning properly. And so that has gone very well.
I understand there are checklists that are used in the LNA process.
Yes.
Can I just get a copy of that so I understand what it looks like?
Yes.
Read through it.
And then awards and recognitions. We already talked about this, and we named the 10 individuals who received the county awards. They've been recognized in front of the county executive, recognized them, and that was terrific. And also the Cleary Awards, national awards. There's an attachment about 5 pages that give you a lot of detail. I don't want to include it in the report, but great job, and we're going to continue recognizing our.
We have not had a chance to recognize here the Cleary.
Right.
We just did the others.
Yeah, this is great.
Could we recognize them now and give them a round of applause? Does anybody know who our Cleary?
Oh, was it
Robbie,
just,
Robbie was, oh, I'm sorry.
Robbie, our Cleary's winners?
So it's the clears are not for.
They're for.
But you can tell a little about.
Sure.
First of all, I just want to say that the overlay that got honorable mention, I thought should have won an award, okay?
I definitely agree with you.
I think it was a misjudgment.
Yes. Oh, I know. These are the ones with their things. Okay.
Well, just to put it in perspective, and I may have said this at the last meeting, that when we went to the electoral board meeting in March, they recognized of all the localities in Virginia, there was one locality who won a Cleary Award last year, and that was Fairfax County. Well, this time, is it two awards and 3 honorable mentions?
Yes.
So I don't know of any other locality in Virginia that won any awards. So this is fantastic. And I think it's just an example. There are many other things we could put in for the awards, but it's just an example day after day. We don't just get the job done. Our staff goes above you. That's terrific. Office personnel, I told you previously, Sean Stewart is moving to, he's now the communications lead person, director. But we're going to have in a couple weeks, 1 week from Monday, the person who has been the absentee mail manager in Arlington is coming to Fairfax County. So that's going to be terrific. Ben Howard will be our new absentee mail manager, doing the job previously performed and currently performed through this election by Sean Stewart. Then we tell you a little something about FOIA requests. In total, so far for the year is 15. Rest assured that will pick up.
What is their status? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yes. Go ahead.
May I speak?
Yeah.
Are we responding to the FOI requests within the required timeframe?
Yes.
What is our standard for acknowledging receipt of requests?
You see what?
Of requests. When a request comes in, how quickly do we expect just a
Sean, can you
yes
speak to this?
received, we're processing?
It's Sean's new responsibility.
It's absolutely new. It's good. We pop over here to say a very short sentence. Absolutely. So yeah, the question at hand, response specifically, we do the initial intake, right? We put in the county's FOIA tracker, follow their procedures. Then we follow up within the 5 day. In terms of an actual response to that initially saying we're working on it, we've not included that necessarily. So going out, because the initial response is to get the information as quickly as possible.
So if an email comes in, there's no, within the first day saying, hey, we've received this. There's
Anne's
no-
putting her hand up to tell me I'm wrong, which is probably
It's an
good.
automatic reply on the, specifically on the elections FOIA inbox saying we've received your message, but we don't acknowledge the message individually when it comes in.
So apologies for that. If it's coming back from us, anything from us is the interaction that provides the actual responsive documentation. But the submission process itself, whether it's the county FOIA, the main one, or the one that we obviously has to come to us, which is elections FOIA, gets back if you have a specific one coming in, automatic reply.
So if somebody submits something to that email address and doesn't get an automatic response,
Then
What's the-
want to reach back out. Yeah, so if anybody's submitting, that's a good point, right? So it means the system either didn't receive it or didn't activate, but yes, they should get an automatic reply specifically from elections. They're using that for us.
okay, and that hasn't changed. That's been the longstanding
Yeah,
process.
that's since we've set up elections FOIA as a specific address. Yep.
Could you also give us a brief snippet? There was a request and some discussion, was it the month before last, about a FOIA reading room, so we put in that request.
We have
Not been successful yet.
not been successful yet. Yeah, I don't necessarily surprise folks working within the county. Most of it right now, to be perfectly blunt, is information gathering, trying to find out there is concern specifically from FOIA counsel when it comes to looking at, while yes, the request has now been, information's been provided outright, so specifically public, right? VFOIA, which is what we operate under, is different than FOIA. County counsel, in looking at it in the past, have flagged issues. Those I can't necessarily enumerate for you right now because they're in the process of trying to tell me what some of them are. But I can say the county's position has been that they feel the hurdles are more of an issue than the service and benefit that having one provides.
Thank you, Sean.
Yep, no worries.
We, just one suggestion, when you're talking about the reading room, you're talking about putting up what's been disclosed.
Right, so our understanding, we're working on
Right.
exactly things that have been asked previously.
If they give you a hard time, another possibility would be to disclose the prior requests that have been fulfilled, just the request. So that someone could look and see, oh, this has been asked for, I'll just ask.
The requests themselves, right, rather than the actual responsive documents.
If for some reason there's some obstacle, which I don't know what it would be, to doing the full library. We could maybe consider that as a fallback.
Put it out, absolutely.
Okay.
No.
What?
I'm all.
Love the
yes.
idea.
I love the idea because I think they're public. For you.
Well,
It's a public.
If you at
request.
least know what has been asked for.
Yes.
You can, if it's close enough, you can just re-ask, and you know you're gonna get it quickly.
I'm agreeing. I'm in violent agreement.
Okay,
The final,
but that's a second best. I'm not trying to.
I know.
our final item is the monthly referrals to the Commonwealth's Attorney and Attorney General. There were 65 individuals who were identified by elect as possibly being non-citizens. 4 of them, after being identified, affirmed their citizenship, and the other 4 we removed from the list because they called our office and indicated that they were non-citizens and did not intend to register. That they're saying when they were at the DMV, they were mistakenly registered. They did not want that to happen.
I'm handing out a copy of a letter that we got shortly after the last meeting, after Greg Brandon, who was here, talked to us about wanting to know something about how this process worked. And since we haven't been together to talk, I'm suggesting that we refer this letter to the county executive.
Thank you.
No, you don't want- they just did the budget. You don't want that job. The registrar to find out some of these process questions. I know we had somebody in the office, since there are a lot of people right now getting their real ID that are having this opportunity. We're gonna see an uptick of people going through the driver's license process. And if you could, please, find out how these processes work, because her effort was, I think, where's Busher? Busher can tell us, I think, in writing, what happened, what she sees when you go to the DMV, and I think that would be useful for all of us to know. But this was a letter to us that came to all of us, and I just thought we'd refer it at this meeting as opposed to.
First of all, I don't know if, Brandon's is online. Oh, he's
Brandon's
right
right
here?
here.
Oh, great.
He'll probably.
Yeah. Great question. Thank you. This says this is the second of two emails. Is there another one?
The first one was on, yes, the first one we got was on, security, and I referred it to, Corey,
Or-
and he's answered, but you all have it in your email, so you can,
Okay.
Cord responded to all of us as well.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it? Any questions on the, on the county, on the registrar's report?
Well, I think this is probing something that's very important. To the point that you raised at our last meeting, which is accidental registration, right? It's fat thumbing it or this or that, and right, that raises an interesting question. Those who proceed to vote when they're non-citizens, it's not a fat finger thing, it's I went to vote. And so with respect to the mens rea, or is this intent?
It's a different question.
It's a more severe concern, but also if you actually proceed to vote, there's no question about confusion, the confusion's gone, you went.
And that's a different question than the number of people that we have that are ending up on the list
as non-citizens.
as non-citizens. The fact that we had 4 this month respond to us and say they didn't need to register to vote. They know they're non-citizens. They went to the DMV and got a driver's license. And so we need to see what that when we start getting those calls back, then we know we've got a problem. I think we knew we had a problem before.
Yeah, that will help us understand.
Yeah. Okay, moving on,
Moving on.
electoral board reports. We'll start with the secretary,
Nothing for you.
Vice Chairman.
Yeah, is this for new business? Or it's reports?
I'm
Yeah,
on
and nothing for you.
It was
Nothing for
Nothing
you.
for me.
Well, let me follow up on.
Well, I have something for you, but go ahead.
All right, well, I have not seen, and perhaps it's come through and I just haven't seen it, but I haven't seen a copy yet of the contract that our vendor had promised to provide. Again, I'm really focused on their commitment that they told me to update the firmware and update things as they get certified at no
The
cost. And I just want to verify that the language says what they are purporting it to say before it actually
Or
becomes an
if it
issue.
doesn't, they've said something else that
That's what I
says
mean.
what they purported to say. Yes, we probably should see that.
And they have just said, I'll give you that, and they've committed to meet all federal requirements, the new federal requirements. But they did stipulate if there are additional state requirements, they can't necessarily, they'll give us updates, but they can't say that they'll meet every requirement that the state might add, because there's no telling what could possibly.
I think the question is on the federal.
It was the federal address. And I heard mixed reviews of the DS 300. And so I'm really curious now to also review the warranty provisions. So if we could just get the agreement, that would be great. Okay. The folks downstairs love it because the tape is easier to read, which is huge. But there were some other concerns about whether it's sufficiently ruggedized and keys breaking off in slots and, just the concerns. I want to know what our remedies are, what that looks like. Thank you.
Was that your electoral board report?
Well, I guess that was kind of in the nature of a report because I was following up on,
Good.
yeah.
Following up. The Fairfax County Public Schools has yet again, will not be surprised, scheduled a teacher workday for election day in November. And as the board will recall, we've been discussing this
Well,
ad nauseum.
in prior occasions, it's been the primary. This seems even worse.
No, oh no,
No,
it
has it
was
been both?
both. Last year, we had this discussion and I worked with a number of people, including the superintendent. But nevertheless, on election day, I ran into several schools that were having teacher workday with parents parking in the elementary school parking lots and students in the building. I would like for us to either, I don't know when the school board meeting is. If it's all right with the electoral board, I will go again to the board, the school board.
I hope you don't have to wait till midnight again.
Midnight, yes, that was fun, but I learned some stuff, like the carrying. If there is no objection, I will sign up to go to the school board. The school board again, we tried it a different way last year. And ask them to please either switch those 2 days or to not have parent-teacher conferences in the schools that are polling places. They tried to do that this year, but they somehow, and we sent them lists, they have lists. Nonetheless, I had the opportunity to mix with parents and students on election day. So if there's no objection, I'll go try again and get on the list and suggest that they reverse that or amend the schedule, and I need to do it pretty quickly.
Well, if you,
Or we can write a hot letter.
well, that was, I was
We
gonna.
did that one year.
I mean, I think it ought to be a letter that resolves this issue. You know, like
It ought to be.
for all time, so we don't have to be doing this.
Superintendent
I mean,
change.
Yeah. Well, I don't really have any good ideas for you other than
I'll
a
be happy
really,
to draft a letter, or I'll be happy
a
to.
really, snarky letter. AI generated, AI is very good at it.
AI
Most
is
people
good at
probably don't
snark.
realize that, unbelievably good.
Yes.
Make it 47 pages long, so that you'll kill people.
No, I would suggest we do both, like, let's
Okay.
just write a letter, and it
Okay,
doesn't have to be
circulate a letter.
snarky, it could be a nice letter. But I think we should put it on the record as well as if you're willing to go, I appreciate your effort.
Well, and I noticed in the polling place changes, there are a number of additional new polling places, none of which were, or most of which were not elementary school. They were other
Yes,
types
but
of
one
buildings.
of them was one of the ones where I happened to trip over students.
Yeah. But,
So-
but the idea when we are making adjustments long-term, there are these other community buildings sometimes,
Sometimes.
and putting a thumb on the scale of buildings that are not going to be disrupted because this recurring, it's never going to get solved because pressures and all of the same reasons, factors that are driving them to do it are going to drive them in 3 years to do it. They have their own constraints. And so I think long-term finding, we have the Reston Teen Center or the Florist United Methodist
Unfortunately.
Church, right? Maybe there are other.
We
Let's
try
try.
that, but schools are generally
Yeah.
our best because of the funding and the meeting of ADA standards. We have so many things that are private buildings that don't still meet ADA standards. But yes, anyway, that's my report. The business,
Done for me.
So on the new business, I wanted to raise, it's the FOIA or VFOIA related, but the change that has been made on the accessibility of the public absentee ballot applications.
Huh.
I'd understood that that had been regularly provided and a change has been made. Try to understand why.
Yes, we were advised,
Well, please go ahead.
we were, our attorneys, when we were looking into a different matter that related to that what we were doing, this came to us during the election last November, that legally we're not permitted to, localities are not permitted to provide the information, the public absentee list, as we have been doing electronically, that it's only available from the state. And for us, we're legally required to have a paper list available for inspection, which we do have, but that we can't legally do so we continue, we didn't make the change in the middle of the presidential election. But, and I did say this in the board meeting last fall, that we would be making the change going forward because we want to comply with the legal requirements.
So the law says inspect and copy.
Right. But previously, we were providing electronic. copies.
Yes. Are you saying we were breaking the law for 20 years?
I'm saying we were doing something that weren't legally permitted to do, so.
Okay, so if the county attorney is wrong, right? How do we fix that? Because I can read the statute, it doesn't say one way or the other. So what's the proper approach at this point, right? We can all put it up on the screen, but it says inspect and copy. In that order. And the copy is not specified. You could make it in smoke signals, I suppose, but the statute doesn't say smoke signals. It doesn't say paper. It doesn't say electronic. It says you get to inspect and copy.
How about if we ask elect?
We did reach out to Elect. Cheryl, could you, if you.
Yeah, I need to go back, but they said it has to come from elect. The
Elect said the electronic version
digital
has to
copy,
be from-
and that there are other records that we're only allowed to,
So this is an elect issue? Or was it a county
Right.
attorney issue?
well, we asked our county attorney and we asked elect. So there wasn't a disagreement there. There are other records that are available to the public or to parties, because this is available to parties to come in and inspect and copy. And so we make photocopies for people at a fee, or they can take a picture, or they can bring in their own scanner and they can scan their own copies. But there are several other reports as well that are only.
It doesn't, I mean, if we have to produce it in paper so that they can take a copy, we are taking an electronic file, taking the resources of the office to reduce it to paper, only for them to have it in paper, to move it back to electronic, because they're gonna OCR it. So, but elect's position is that inspect and copy means one particular form of copy, but not a different particular form of copy. Wow. Who would elect? When I call there, who do I need to talk to?
Commissioner Beals is the lead person, that's why I speak with. I didn't speak with her in this matter, but, and again, this is not something we were interested in stopping or changing.
Yeah,
But
because it's a
really,
burden for us, right?
we were looking at a different issue. I give you a similar, sometimes. Again, we were doing this for a long time, and our attorneys, when they were looking into other matters, advised us, if you keep doing this, you're doing something that you're not legally permitted to do. But another example, I don't know if this would relate, legalese. Individuals are permitted to come in and inspect the statement of results. We scan it, we could provide it electronically, that'd be very easy for us. But legally, you are only permitted to come in, and there are interested parties that go to a lot of trouble to come in, and I know it's doesn't sound like the most efficient way to operate, but they come in and scan them. They get the information that we could provide electronically. We're not permitted, that's not the process. And we also get FOIA requests where individuals want to get that information electronically. And we've gone through elect, we've gone through our attorneys, we're not permitted to do so.
I think this is an example of where technology has outrun the code. There has not been a code commission.
But with respect, the word copy, that's not ambiguous, copy. Right? It doesn't stipulate paper, it doesn't stipulate electronic, so perhaps it's the code or perhaps it's not, but if it's elect, we can't change elect, or we're downstream from elect.
We've been doing it for at least
Over 20 years.
15 years that I know about. But the parties do get it electronic.
So that still is happening, the party.
That's
saying from elect.
The state party,
Well-
let me be clear here. It's the state parties that get it from elect, not the local parties. So the local parties are downstream from the state parties. So the state parties get it, and then they distribute it however they choose to their local units.
So the concern I've heard expressed relates to the quality of the data once it boomerangs back from Richmond. The data coming from the county is really accurate. The data coming back from the state has data fields that have been either obliterated or made nonsensical. Countries of overseas voters, the address of the country disappears when you get it back from state. So there's an advantage to getting the county records, which are just better. And it's not like, when it's outbound, I can't believe that we're obfuscating things. So it sounds like there's a data processing issue, but I mean, when we send things to this, when the content of the public absentee ballot application list goes to the state, are there fields that are obscured before we send it? Are there fields of data that are removed from that report?
They control the data.
Yeah, we do. It's just a report in Veris. We just hit a button.
And I think that's part of it, is that they control Veris. And they're doing the replacement of Veris. We're certainly experts. We utilize data. But it's not it's LX data. I think that's, I mean, again, the code's probably not written well and it's not updated.
One of the things that changes the data is what each individual party does with it. In other words, one time I had to explain to somebody that called me very upset that everybody in a precinct was identified as one particular party. And what they had was something that had gone through the party process. And in that piece of it, their vendor had screwed up. Because the parties are using something probably from their states that have had some massaging done to it by their vendors, by the party vendors. The parties don't use the same vendors. And so they get the data to that vendor and then they're looking at data. So the systems that the parties use are not similar, or maybe similar, but they're not the same. I dare say you could look at whatever the Republicans are looking at and whatever the Democrats are looking at, and it's not the same.
I think another key point that Cheryl just reminded me, when the lawyer spoke with us, elect controls voter history. When we get a FOIA request, even if it's from an attorney general in another state, even if they're looking into possible duplicate voting, we can't tell them the voting history of any of our voters. We refer them to elect. That's controlled, and this is a part of the voting history, the absentee list. And I don't think currently there's a way to get around that. I think that's the way the law is written.
And parties generally add to their database what results from their phone banks are and what primaries somebody has voted in, or the primary votes, or that kind of information. So they're not looking all the time directly at what the state has sent.
So the concern I've heard expressed is that the data feed from Richmond, not massaged or as amended or as
There's no
supplemented,
okay.
is obliterating data fields, which makes it more immediate to have
That's
accurate-
interesting.
the accurate
because-
information from here, because going to state, if it's been garbled, it's a disservice, right? It's actually a lack of transparency, which is being driven by what I would say is an outlier reading of what the word copy means, or a very peculiar term of art reading of the word copy, is creating practical problems because the data is not clean.
Now, I'll give another example, and I share your frustration, but when Chris Hensel was on the electoral board, we kept asking, why can't we look at obituaries? We knew there were issues with our voter list with people that shouldn't be on there because they were possibly deceased. We couldn't look at obituaries. Well, why can't you? It's a tool. We were not permitted until Alex said that we were permitted. When they made that change, you see, we
I think
took
you did.
advantage of it.
Okay, if you want to get back to me, I'm happy to call Alexa so they can give me help me understand their point of view.
And I'll get you a good contact person.
Yeah, that'd be great. I have nothing further. One's enough.
You said it, I didn't. Any old business?
Time to me.
I don't think we have any old business. It's now time. Do we have anybody in the audit for public comment? I'll give my monthly speech on public comment. For those in the room, If you want to make a comment, please raise your hand, and we've moved the podium so that all this side of the room wasn't blocked by the podium. To come back, please come to the podium and speak. And you have 3 minutes, and if it's too terribly complicated or information that you're asking for, we will get back to you. And there are also people online. So is there anybody in the room? Christine? If you'll state your name for the record.
I will. Christine Grimm, Fairfax GOP. So I just want to amplify a little bit of the situation regarding these two data products. There's actually a third one that Kate mentioned, which is GOP Data Center, which is the one that is massaged by the party. I am not talking about that.
Okay.
Or NBIL van or whatever the Democrat equivalent is. Not talking about that. There are two data products, the public absentee ballot application list, which we've gotten for, according to Judy Flagg, 20 years.
Yes.
And is no longer being made available. And the daily absentee list, which is a purchasable product made available by the state under 24.2, 406, 407, and I think 405, which is available to parties, to nonprofits that are dedicated to getting out the vote, campaigns, so on. So the DAL, daily absentee list from the state, is purchasable, typically costs between $700 and $1,000. And you get that for whichever district size you want. We get it for Fairfax. Other people get it for the whole state. That is the state product we're talking about, which is inferior. The public absentee ballot application list, for example, has mailing country as a variable, what we call a field. Think of it as a column header in Excel. And under that, it has the values of all of the countries from which UOCAVA, uniform and overseas civilian voters are mailing from, right? This is a really useful field for understanding UOCAVA voting patterns. All of that information is compressed arbitrarily, randomly, and messily into address line 2 and 3 in the state product, the daily absentee list. That's just one example. The international field is another one in the daily absentee list, which says, is this international, right? Is this an international voter? Not quite sure what they think that means, but it's a column header. Under that, regardless of the foreign address, which is already discombobulated, it's false for every single entry. Now, what we're referring to here is the Democrat primary down in 2025. We've looked at earlier ones as well, and this is typical. So the issue that we're raising, and it's a compliment to the staff here, is that what's represented in the public absentee ballot application list appears to be clear, it's easy to use. The field definitions are well done. It's as much as humanly can be done, appears to be a decent, well-constructed export out of Veris. By the time it gets to the state, and this is based on entries into Veris that are made at the county level, right? Because you're the guys getting the applications, you're the guys approving them, you're getting the ballots are coming in here. But for whatever reason, state generation of the state is very bad. So this is, I don't want to take any more time on this, but I want to make it very clear that there really is a known for a long time bad quality of this data. It has been, and it's particularly bad in the daily absentee list, which is particularly important because that is the only place that you see UOCAVA voting.
The what?
UOCAVA, a uniform and overseas voting.
Let me make a suggestion, and that I think that's something for the party to decide. If I don't know if you want us to submit that to us, or if you all are the party that's getting the data might want to talk to the state and say, look at what a mess this is.
Oh, people have for years.
What's that?
People have raised this with the state
Oh.
for years. Ken Cuccinelli used to talk about trying to figure out how to sue them about it. The candidates pay good money. Everybody has to buy their data. They pay good money for this. And it's, it's like buying some piece
So
of
would
stuff.
you like us to contact elect?
Yes. Yes, I think this needs to be dealt with through official channels. All kinds of people complained for many, many years about the inadequacy of the states. The difference here is that the county data provided by Fairfax, the public absentee ballot application list, is a control in this experiment that shows that it can be done better.
Let me suggest, well, is there?
Yeah.
What do you suggest?
Let me just ask, Christine, is if we were to get the Pavel?
Yeah.
Is that a fair, if we can fix the Pavel accessibility issue, does that address the Dow issue? Do we still need to?
It
have
does. I mean,
better
it
Dow?
absolutely addresses, for us, we would use the Pavel rather than the Dow. Because the Dow is, for whatever reason, garbled data that is paid, that people pay money for, that is given to them as a CSV file. And then you have to parse it. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do. We're gonna try and figure it out.
There are two solutions, fix Dow, which they've been trying to do for years, or go to elect and have them revisit what the word copy means. Seems like it's two sides of the same coin.
Except you would think they want uniformity, so the goal would be to have good data, not just for Fairfax County, but for everybody in the Commonwealth.
I would hope so, but
But we'll take what we can get. We're Fairfax County, and you guys do the job.
thanks, Kristen.
Greg. As we've heard, I am not up to date on what the Democrats are receiving. If we're having the same problem. I am up to date that it didn't seem to be an issue, as serious an issue on whether they got it electronically. I had that discussion. Go. Yes,
Greg Brandon, FCDC.
Yeah,
So yeah, I look at the reports that Sean, this is for general elections. I don't
yeah,
do this for primaries.
yeah.
Better. So that Sean gets, and then and compare that to our database. The Democratic database, which gets its feed from, as you said,
Yes.
the state. And it doesn't always match up.
Okay.
But I'm wondering if there is there's gotta be a time lag. Well, I don't know if there's gotta be, but is there a time lag between what we get from the voting centers and getting into
Well, by the
elect,
time it gets-
and then back to the parties? I
Okay.
think there might be, but
Here's some
still the bottom line numbers may not always match.
breaking information that is slightly disappointing. As incredible as Fairfax County is, we just press a button. That's all we do. So the state has the same button. We just generate a report. It's their report.
And why is there a discrepancy? Because it's huge.
Adam State.
I think they're not doing it,
Show you on a Zoom call.
and I'm not saying they do what we do, but they
And
could.
they don't press a button. I don't even know how to deal with this. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I do think it may be more of a party issue. If the parties, the code says that they're able to get the data from a leg.
No,
Can I just?
yeah, you don't need to come back up here. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no, this is, again, I'm not talking about the party's purchase of the data, which goes to
I know,
data trust,
I
which
get
goes to GOP data center. It's not a party thing. If we buy the Dow, it's the same to the daily absentee list, which is the state product. It's not a Republican versus Democrat thing. Anybody buying the Dow is getting the Dow. It's the state generated
I'm not
product.
saying that we provide something through the state system. Ferris is controlled by the state, but certainly they can get the same report that we get.
But you would think. You would think, then why don't the fields
May I
match? Why don't they?
suggest, may
Fire
I
the value.
suggest this before we something here, because it's really weird. Could somebody could both parties provide the staff with a copy of a day of list that is different, that's a mess? Or if it's,
Like the first 5 pages of it, we don't need to.
we don't
We
need
need
the
a
whole
1,000 page,
thing,
but
but
just-
just an example of what the problem is. Greg, if the Democrats have something that's an example of the problem, if they don't need to submit it.
I'll have to think about it.
Can I just say, I'd like to do, because we don't have a Pavel for 2025. what I'd do would be the 2024 general.
Okay, that would be
Yeah,
better.
compare the Dell and compare the public absentee ballot.
Okay, because we would have one that we sent out for 2024. If you have a copy of
2024 is what?
a copy of an old one, that would be good. And that would get us, and then whoever ends up quizzing the state would have a copy of.
Yes, we can certainly escalate the issue.
But it would be better if we had some kind of, so here's X and here's Y and they don't match and why not? Good.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, that was 3 minutes.
all right.
Is there anyone else? Anyone online?
No.
Awesome.
Okay, then, we do have a closed session. And in my endless set of papers here, I move,
Well, let's let the public know that.
I'm gonna, yes,
Okay,
that we will probably not take any action after this closed session, any public action. You can hang around and prove it to yourselves, or you can go on home and eat dinner. And I move that the board enter a closed session to discuss personnel matters as permitted by Virginia Code 2.23711, parenthesis A parenthesis 1, including the annual review of the general registrar as required by Virginia Code 24.2, 109.1.
I'll second the motion.
Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are going into closed session. We are back in session. In accordance with Virginia Code 2.2-3712, I'm asking the Secretary of the Electoral Board to conduct a roll call vote to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, that one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were conducted in the closed meeting, and two, only such public business as was identified in the motion for closed meeting by which the closed meeting was convened, was heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting of the electoral board. That roll call vote shall be recorded and included in the minutes of the electoral board. Mr. Secretary.
Okay, I'd like to call the roll. Mr. Vice Chairman?
Aye.
Aye. Let's start with the chairman.
He said aye.
Oh, is that an aye?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought it was
No,
okay.
Aye.
Now chairman,
Aye.
secretary says aye.
Okay, we've been, having finished our business for the day. When are we meeting? When's the next meeting? June 4th.
We moved it up.
Thank you.
We moved it to June 4th.
So until then,
Until then.
we are adjourned.